and here we go.
There's the W. Here's ignition.
Roger, roll, Atlantic. Doubling up.
Did you just do a Kerbal?
Back to the moon and beyond.
Put that in the big bag, Jingle.
Back at home, we all have a lot of work to do, but from here, it sure looks like a perfect world.
Propulsion continues to be normal.
We did have an observation.
343 unfolds to go.
It's orange.
Water towers can fly!
Bingo! Right in the center.
Where's Jacqueline? There it is!
That was surreal.
That's not what we want to see.
No!
Oh my God.
Yikes, you bet. We don't need any more of these.
Good afternoon. You are taking a live look right now at Space Launch Complex 40 at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida, where SpaceX is getting ready to launch another batch of Starlink V2 mini satellites into orbit. This is the Starlink 6-97 mission. I'm Sawyer Rosenstein. I will be your host for today's launch broadcast, but as is always the case, I am not alone. I am joined by my two competent field cohort of co-hosts today. Joining me from the field is Max Evans. How's it going, Max?
Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, it is a bit of a breezy afternoon here on Florida's Space Coast, but the sun is shining and there is a Starlink vertical on the pad in daylight hours, so there are certainly worse places to be in the world right now.
Yeah, it's strange having the Florida team together and it not being 2 a.m.
I know, this is kind of bizarre.
Yeah. Also joining us from the field is D Wise. How's it going, D?
It is going really well. You know, it's a beautiful, albeit windy day, so sorry if my audio is not quite perfect here, but we've got a rocket on the pad getting ready to launch, so it's a good day.
Yeah, we're gonna do our best the best that we can with our field audios. You can see the team set up there. There is Max and D. You could see the breeze as well. So if you hear the noise, we apologize for it, but we're gonna try our best to give you a clean feed as possible. Of course, we'll make sure you get that clean launch audio too, and that will be courtesy of Jay Keegan, who'll be the one pushing the buttons, pulling the levers, and hopefully making things look and sound good. And as always, if you have any questions, you can tag us at NSF or at NASA Spaceflight. We will do our best to answer as many of them as we can throughout the course of the broadcast. Whew, I think we made it through all the intro stuff. So, let us begin with this particular mission, Starlink 6-97, with those 29 Starlink V2 mini satellites. Max, which is the orbit for this one, and what can we expect for this mission?
Well, today's mission is heading off on the usual Group 6 shell trajectory, which is about a 43-degree inclination heading southeast, targeting just north of the Bahamas for the first stage landing. So typical for, as I just said, typical for what we've seen for pretty much the entire Group 6 Starlink shell to this point. And with that point, as you can see here on the left-hand side of your screen, these are all the NOTAMs enclosures and airspace closures to accommodate both launch and recovery of that first stage booster. On the bottom right there, that is going to be the area for the booster to land on the drone ship. Just read the instructions, and yes, it is actually just read the instructions this time and not a shortfall of gravitas like last time. No further comments. But then, of course, obviously closer to the panhandle, or not the panhandle, but the peninsula of Florida there, those are your launch airspace and water closures. Speaking of booster recovery, the booster on today's mission is booster B1078, and today would be its 25th flight to this point. In terms of its flight history, it includes the likes of Cruise 6, SES-03B mPOWER B, USSF 124, BlueBird 1-5, Nusantara Lima, and 19 previous Starlink missions. So a veteran, I think to this point, as a lot of boosters here in Florida are now at or over the 20 flight milestone, and one is currently over 30. Although hopefully there should be a couple of boosters there joining it rather soon, at least hopefully. But a bit farther downrange than just read the instructions is the fairing recovery ship Bob, aiming to scoop those out of the Atlantic Ocean. So really is business as usual for SpaceX in terms of a Starlink mission for today, albeit with the exception that obviously we are launching during actual decent daytime hours and not at 2 o'clock in the morning. So a pleasant change of pace.
Yeah, it feels like at this point, that's what makes it not your ordinary Starlink launch. Finally being able to see the rocket and see everything in daylight here. But of course, it's not the original time that it was supposed to launch. The launch time has kind of been pushing and pushing. The window opening at 12:42 p.m. Eastern time. The window is set to close at 4:42 p.m. Eastern time, and of course, the current T0 53 minutes and 30 seconds from now. And of course, weather, as you heard, is a bit on the windy side. But D, what are we looking at weather-wise for this launch?
Yeah, so the 45th Weather Squadron, which of course puts out forecasts for the mission, did not have wind listed as one of their concerns. So Falcon 9 is able to handle quite heavy wind, to be totally honest. The concerns that they're looking at locally are the cumulus cloud rule, which they gave a 15% probability violation. And looking out over the launch pad, we definitely see some of those clouds. So hopefully those don't become an issue. And the other one, though not local to the Cape, is one of the additional risk criteria, which is the booster recovery weather, which they have low to moderate. So it's still on the low end. It's not something overly concerning, but no doubt the teams will be keeping a close eye on winds and the wave height, where the booster is actually landing on just read the instructions to make sure everything is good for a good recovery and reflight.
Exactly. And that's one of the big things that we've talked about with the wind in the past. In fact, there was one launch that all of us did that seemed crazy windy of, oh my gosh, how were they even able to launch in it? And in fact, at that point, I had asked Kiko Donchev with SpaceX about that. And basically, they replied saying that, yeah, it's not exactly the wind itself, it's some of the things that come along with the wind. And in particular, what the wind is like at the ground area, how it interacts with some of the ground infrastructure and all of the towers and things around it. So they can launch in pretty strong winds, as we've seen. So we will see what ends up happening today. But the official severe weather watch at the Kennedy Space Center, Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, is completely green. There is nothing on the board. There are no active wind warnings or watches as well. One thing we can watch over at Rusty's at the port is things going on at Port Canaveral. And in fact, talking about drone ships there, you can see a shortfall of gravitas, which just came back from the previous Starlink mission, is on its way out in the Atlantic now, heading out for the next Starlink mission after this. That is Starlink 6-98 for once they're actually going in numerical order here, as crazy as that is to believe. And as of now, the 6-98 mission is scheduled for just 2 days from now, Wednesday. The window opens 1:01 p.m. Eastern Time. Of course, we'll be covering that one too, and that one also set to launch from this Launchpad Space Launch Complex 40. And Max, I know we were talking about this earlier. It seems like we're going to be seeing a lot more launches this year from 40 as opposed to over at 39A.
Yeah, so it is a little bit unfortunate, but also it means better news for us in many ways because just like you mentioned earlier, Sawyer, Kiko Donchev, who is the vice president of launch over at SpaceX, posted recently on X before the new year. He stated that they are going to be winding down, at least for now, if and maybe for good, single stick Falcon 9 launch operations out of 39A in order to focus further on Falcon Heavy and eventually Starship from LC-39A as well. So while that means our cameras won't be getting the best of views because Slick 40 is a bit farther away from the press site and not as accessible and easy to set up for both Dee and myself for when it comes to streams, but that will allow teams on the ground over at 39A a lot more time to make sure that all Starship hardware is ready to go to hopefully support one and maybe two missions this year. We'll have to wait and see. Hopefully at least one at some point, maybe in late Q3 or Q4. But with missions shifting over to Slick 40, that includes the likes of crewed missions, both with NASA and private. Of course, they can do that because, as you can see just to the right of the rocket, there is that black tower, which is a relatively new crew access tower that was first used back in September of 2024 to launch the Crew 9 mission to the International Space Station. So it has been certified for a while. They just really haven't really had a use for it really until this point. And obviously with 39A coming offline for single stick Falcon operations, that also includes Dragon in that context. So the Crew 12 mission, which is coming up currently net February 15th of this year, is going to be launching from Slick 40, which is going to be exciting for a number of things. First and foremost, obviously, seeing Dragon fly from Slick 40 again is always a treat. But also, they had just built a brand new landing zone over at Slick 40, and we could actually see it in one of the feeds that SpaceX had on their official live stream on the last Starlink mission. It was just off to the left-hand side of the screen. What that means, obviously, because with crew missions having an RTLS now, or a return to launch site for the first stage booster, that first stage booster is obviously going to be coming back and landing at the Slick 40 landing zone, which is, of course, the first time that will have happened. So, rather exciting times coming up for Slick 40. But that is a lot of workload for that pad to pick up, considering the workload that Pad A had last year as well. But it is exciting to see that SpaceX still has more plans in store for Falcon Heavy going forward, because we haven't seen one. Well, D and I haven't seen one since June of 2024, but Florida has not seen one since October of 2024 with the launch of the Europa Clipper mission for NASA. So we are always happy to see more Falcon Heavies fly, because it is a bit of a rare beast now. But what's kind of scary is by the time we see it fly again, likely Starship would have flown more, which is kind of a scary thought to think about. But even though Falcon Heavy launched for the first time all the way back in 2018, 8 years ago. So lots of stuff to look forward to coming up.
Yeah, thanks for making me feel old. That was 8 years ago. I believe it was
I know.
actually in February. So coming up on that anniversary there. But yeah, so as much as it's nice to see launches from 39A, hopefully at least it will be home to the big boys now with Falcon Heavy and Starship. Let's see here. Here's another interesting question. I'll throw this one to you, Max, as well, from Supersonic Retro Propulsion. And D, if you have any thoughts on it, come on in. They're saying, do different boosters have different personalities? Are some more temperamental than others? I don't know if you guys have talked to anyone that's worked over at Roberts Road on any of these boosters and have heard anything about that.
Yeah, so that's actually a great question, and I can answer it to the likes of it being similar with aircraft, because of course with any sort of vehicle of this size and scale, with the amount of power that it has to produce and handle, there is of course immense complexity in its thousands of parts on it. So which of course with every single part comes a little bit of tolerance variance. No matter how tight those tolerances may be, there's always going to be specific differences. And of course some boosters have had rougher histories than others, key which of being booster 1069 currently having a very rough landing after its first flight during CRS 24 back in December of 2021. Very hard landing, and we thought it wasn't going to fly again because of the damage occurred. But of course, obviously, it has flown 28 times now since. But some boosters are more difficult to work on. Some boosters are honestly just a peach, and I have talked to a few technicians on that front, and they have a number of boosters that they both love and, of course, hate very much. And of course, they are relieved to see the bad ones go whenever they are expended. So yes, they do. Although obviously can't get into a lot of specifics because that we are just not privy to that information. But it is just like aircraft. It's like cars. Anything that's really complex and having to power itself. Everything has character at that point. It's kind of funny to say that, considering how mechanical and how, I guess, soulless it can be for its purpose. But it is a human-made machine, and human-made machines more often than not do have character and soul.
Yeah, and I mean that goes back. Go ahead, mark your bingo cards. Shuttle as well. Talking to the people that worked on the orbiters, each of them very much had their own personalities, so to speak. The ones that behaved a little better, the ones that had known temperamental issues, little quirks, designs, and of course, then as each one was built, they ended up having different numbers of tiles and different masses and different materials. different types of cockpits as they learned, as they built more. So each of them very much had differences to it. And speaking of that hard landing, you can see on the left there, this was that first attempt for B-1069, where it came down a little bit on the harder side, and came in with a little bit of a lean. Although this was using Starlink to get clearer views of the actual landings, so we were stuck with the kind of grainy stuff. But yeah, you could see that tendency to lean to the right. Not great, Bob.
It can be a little bit difficult to know what you're looking at, say if you don't watch streams very often, but if you do like a back-to-back A/B test between this landing and most other landings, the landing legs are a lot flatter at the bottom, meaning it came down way harder, and the actual crush cores, which are in those rods that connect the legs to the actual fuselage of the booster, they were crushed a lot more, and that's why the legs themselves are a lot flatter and a lot more compressed. And it's a bit more tricky to see here, because there is a bit of space there between the engine bells facing on this side compared to the opposite side of what we're seeing. But it did come down hard enough to actually crunch a lot of those engine bells as well. And if you look very carefully during the brief period where there was still some T-Teb and sparks coming out from that center Merlin engine, there was nowhere near as much space there as there is normally during first stage landings. So a rather interesting thing to see. We didn't notice it right away when it happened, but we did notice it when we began to see the booster come back into port, and it was leaning a bit to the right from our perspective. And then obviously it got closer, and we saw a bunch of engine bells being, being smushed right into the deck of the drone ship. So not all boosters are created or treated equal, I think.
Yeah, that is for sure. And I think it's also worth pointing out the fact when we talk about the crush cores, those are specific parts of the leg that are designed that, in the event of a hard landing, they will take the brunt of the impact and the force first, rather than risking most of it going straight into the legs and then damaging the fuselage. So we've seen cracks kind of near some of those landing legs in the earlier missions. And as they got those crush cores and improved on those, as well as improved the legs, improved the ability to continue to stay flat, and of course have gotten better at nailing the landings, we've seen a lot less of that. But it's still there. They still have those crush cores. It's the just in case. Let's see. Here's a support that we got from Unplugged Lamp saying, heading down to the Cape for Artemis 2. Super excited. Where will I be able to find you guys? Gotta get that patch. We need to do like some kind of NSF meetup or something around Artemis time. We should do that.
That would be really cool. So I'm sure many of us will be at the press site, so that's not something that you would be able to find us. So there is a chance that some of us will be out and about at various public locations. There are honestly so many places to go to watch a launch, and it's a bit locked down this time. They're going to be closing Playa Linda Beach, I believe, starting January 31st. Until it launches. So even if you're just trying to see it on the pad, you're not going to be able to go to Playa Linda Beach. But there are places in Titusville, Port St. John, I'm sure down in Cocoa, that will all offer excellent, excellent views of the mission. And of course, if you're looking for a way to figure out where to watch, we have a video all about where you should go to watch a launch. So 39B is on the north side, so I'd recommend especially some of those places a bit in the Titusville area, more north, if you want the closest view, or perhaps looking at what the visitor center may or may not offer. They tend to offer packages that are pretty neat for that up-close viewing. But yeah, so as far as where we will be, we're working on plans, and we'll be out and about, but many of us will be here at the press site and therefore unable to meet at any of the public viewing spots.
But since we're actually on the topic of traveling for Artemis, I want to caution everybody who wants to come down for Artemis. I know NASA is being very public and pushing the no earlier than February 6th date hard right now. But there is still a lot that both the vehicle and the ground systems have to go through in order to meet that date. So I think it's safe to say that all of us here, especially those of us here who were covering Artemis 1, like both of us were at that time, know that there is a lot of room for potential slips and delays here. And obviously, some of the factors that play into that are that the core stage that is being used for this mission on SLS did not go to Stennis for a green run fire, for example, or multiple tanking tests there as well. And of course, before we even get to launch, there has to be a full wet dress rehearsal or multiple wet dress rehearsals if they come across issues. And of course, in order to launch at all, they have to be cleared, and that has to go well. And launch director Charlie Blackwell Thompson has to be satisfied with with the data and results that they get from that wet dress rehearsal itself. So there is a lot to go through as well. And until we have a confirmed good wet dress rehearsal, I would honestly caution anybody from booking plane tickets, booking hotels, rental cars, anything, because there is a lot of room to delay here if stuff does go wrong.
One thing I will tack, even on top of that, is there are places that are selling out. So if there are refundable options, if you have flexibility in your schedule, that's yet another thing to keep in mind, because it's no doubt going to be a crazy busy time here on the Space Coast. So many people will be coming to try to witness this historic return to the moon. It's such an exciting thing. I totally understand not wanting to miss it, but make sure you're prepared for all the possibilities.
Yeah, I was just gonna say if there's refundable options, definitely, because Artemis 1 ended up going for his first attempt in mid-August, and then again a couple days later in August, and then launched in November. So, yeah, things change very quickly.
And
So,
mind you, it rolled out for initial testing in March. So, I mean, Grant, Artemis 1 was a unique beast. Obviously, it was the first time they were ever rolling out a full stack SLS vehicle. And on that first rollout, that obviously was not for flight. So there's a lot that is different here, but also it's SLS and a vehicle that is powered by hydrogen, which of course is a notoriously tricky substance to handle with any sort of launch vehicle. So just be cautious. Like that is my warning to everyone who wants to come down: is be cautious with your booking.
yep. And of course, stick with all the socials and everything here at NSF because we'll make sure to keep you updated if anything changes with those dates. But one thing that doesn't change is the timeline that we are used to seeing for these Starlink missions. And we are getting into the timeline now. At this point, hopefully, the launch director will verify that we are go for propellant load. They do a poll going into it that is done silently with buttons at their consoles. Of course, we don't actually get to hear any of this. The only reason we know that they would be go for prop load is when they actually start loading propellant, which happens about the T-minus 35-minute mark. That's when they begin loading the RP-1, the rocket propellant 1, the refined kerosene, into stage 1. That also starts loading into stage 2. Meanwhile, stage 1 liquid LOX load, liquid oxygen, also begins at that time. The RP1 load will continue until about the 20-minute, 20-second mark, which is the best vent, as we like to call it, as they do the LOX chill down. That will mean that the RP1 load is complete on stage 2, and then start chilling down the lines for the super chilled liquid oxygen to begin being loaded into the second stage. So all of that still to come, as you see there on the timeline, and hopefully we will start seeing that propellant load in just a bit. And of course, we'll be keeping an eye on the booster once that does happen as we enter Frost Watch. So everyone in chat, also keep your eyes out to see if you start seeing frost forming on the vehicle. Let's see here. Here's a question from Bede saying, how easy is it for a launch to get canceled? Like like in terms of bad weather, how bad does it have to be? Like when they ground airplanes? And there's a whole list of different kinds of weather criteria. There's so many little things too. I mean, obviously you think, rain and stuff like that, but cloud, wind, space weather, I mean, there's so much that goes into it, right, Max?
So there is a lot that can actually go wrong, both on the vehicle side, on the ground side, and also with the weather side. And I think those are the three major umbrellas that are considered whenever trying to get a launch vehicle off the ground. Of course, on the vehicle, you have, of course, the engines, all the hydraulics. The actual payload itself can also be having troubles, which we have seen before. But on the ground, you have everything that has to do with conditioning, propellant loading, the pumps, pressures, everything. And then, of course, on the weather side, you have winds, clouds, space weather, radiation, space debris even as well has been also a a factor in launch forecasts. So I think D was very excited to answer this question. So I'm going to pass this answer off to D now and see what you have to say.
No, I wanted to jump in right off the bat and say I don't know if this question was intending to get one of us to say the word that we don't say prior to a launch or not, but I was making sure y'all were going to be very careful to not say that exact word. With that said, I mean, you've covered it. There are so many different things that could play into the event of a launch not happening. So you can't give it any real odds. I know we've got some stats in the back channels, but there are so many different things that play into it that you can't always be prepared for. So we see launch times get adjusted or changed to different days really regularly, and you always have to be prepared for it.
Exactly. And again, it's those little things like we were talking about, things you might not realize. This is the weather rules from the 45th Weather Squadron, the over on the Space Force side that actually monitor and help with the weather forecasting. So again, winds, potential for lightning is the big one. In particular, clouds. You can see there the anvil cloud rule, the thick cloud rule. Of course, anything that has potential going through rain. Smoke plumes are not great for it. And then my favorite, the tribo electrification, where going through a cloud means the rocket can create its very own lightning as it goes through it. And that goes all the way back to a silly rocket, Ares 1X, where that term really became well known because of a
Best
bunch
rocket.
of. You're funny. A bunch of delays related to the tribo electrification rule.
And also cough Apollo 12, cough SCE to aux, cough.
Well, that one didn't delay from it. That was just they learned not to do that. So,
Well, that's where the whole lightning rule came from, though, right? And it was still affected by lightning.
I mean, fair, very fair point.
And by affected, I mean struck.
Yeah, it struck and caused a whole bunch of issues with the electrical systems on board, and yes, the famous SCE to aux switch flip that ended up saving the mission. So yeah, let's see here. Again, if you have questions, you could tag us at NASA Spaceflight or at NSF. And I believe Frost Watch is officially underway, as it looks like we are seeing frost on the vehicle, if I'm not mistaken here.
Yes, indeed. Through the camera that I have, or the monitor that I have, just over my left shoulder, I'm seeing a bit of a white line forming on the bottom of the first stage LOX tank now. So you can just about see it through the shrubbery there, but the shrubbery here is so pesky and annoying sometimes. But yes, so they have now commenced propellant loading, and they are now committed to that 4:08 p.m. local time T0, because of course they do not have the ability to recycle for a different attempt once they go into propellant loading due to a lack of resources. So it is now either 4:08 or not today, but based on how things are looking, I mean the sun is shining. We have a bit of high altitude clouds around us now. It is also a bit breezy, but everything seems to be looking okay for a launch today. And of course, SpaceX obviously seems to agree, because there is now frost being seen on the vehicle. So it's either now or not today at all.
Yes, and a lot of that has to do with the way that they load the propellants and the fact that they are super chilled. So they're not just cooled down, they're cooled down even more so, which as a result densifies it. So basically, by making it even colder, you can fit more propellant into smaller space, or into the same space, excuse me. But that also means that it does boil off quite fast. So what they try and do is wait as late as possible to load the propellant, and then once it's loaded up, they basically go right away. That's why it's nicknamed load and go. They wait till the last possible minute, give it as little time as possible to boil off or evaporate off, and then they just launch it. So
Yeah,
that is why
Falcon 9 also doesn't have any sort of insulation besides the actual tank surface itself, which is, I believe, aluminum on Falcon 9. But because there's no insulation, there is nothing but the actual tank wall itself to shield it from warmer temperatures, which of course happens a lot in Florida, if not all the time, especially compared to any sort of cryogenic fluid. So obviously, with them warming up constantly, you have boil off, and the propellant is expanding, and that is why they have to load at the literal last possible second. It is measured very, very carefully, but they get a lot more performance out of both the engines and the actual fuel tanks as well because of this method. But as a result, it is a bit sensitive. But Falcon 9 has obviously proven that it is a very reliable and robust launch vehicle, even with this kind of very peculiar load and go loading procedure.
It is. It's unique, basically, to Falcon 9 at this point. They were the ones that kind of pioneered this, which, as a result, though, does mean that they have to go. There isn't really a holding point like we're used to seeing for traditional rockets up to this point.
Yeah, and the same can be said for Starship as well. And I mean, Starship takes about 50, I believe, 50 or so minutes to load both the ship and the super heavy booster. But they do have the ability to hold for, if I'm not mistaken, around 20 to 25 minutes, simply because of the volume of propellant that they have on board. The actual amount of fuel there, both with LOX and methane, is enough to keep everything cool enough or cold enough to keep a strong enough density for them to use and get the performance desired out of both ship and booster. So it doesn't have any insulation with its stainless steel construction, but there is a lot more propellant on board Starship, and which is why they have some ability to hold if they need to. But that is why Falcon does not.
It also boggles my mind that it only takes about 15 minutes more to load Starship than it does Falcon 9, and just the size difference between the two.
Yeah, and it should be even faster over on Pad 2 because the pumps that they have over at the fueling tank farm at Pad 2 are insane. Like there's no other way to describe it. They're huge, they're fast, and I think they should be able. I think, well, we don't know for sure, but our predictions are that both ship and booster will be loaded simultaneously and will take around 35 to 40 minutes, which is about the same amount of time that it takes to load Falcon, which is almost an order of magnitude smaller. It's absolutely insane.
SpaceX never ceases to impress when it comes to things like that. Um, let's see here. Robin saying a friend of mine is in Nassau down in the Bahamas just now. Any chance they will hear the landing sonic boom? I think it's typically harder to hear those down in the Bahamas. In fact, really, unless you're coming back for an RTLS.
Yeah, I don't think you would. I'm not gonna say no because you never say never, and sometimes if it is really quiet and you're listening really closely, you can hear the sonic booms from really far away during RTLSs. So maybe, but I would expect it to be directed well away from your location, but that doesn't mean it's not worth a shot. And definitely let us know if you do hear anything. It will be delayed, so calculate your distance to the rough and landing area and figure out exactly how long it'll be for sound to reach you from there. But then you just have to wait and I was gonna say see, wait and listen.
Yeah, wait and hear. So that would be cool if you can, though. I don't know of anybody that has, especially given that they only did that singular landing actually within the islands around the Bahamas, as opposed to now where it's slightly further downrange than the islands themselves. Which that was cool for that one particular landing that they did. Let me thank some people here real quick. Matthias, I believe, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, saying they are ordering from Czechia. I'm going to compete in Czech Rocket Challenge for the first time, so I need some cool shirt on me. Very nice. And of course, getting the Raptor shirt with the thrust collection. Love it. Thank you very much for that. And hey, it's Max in the corner of the screen. And Shazbert saying, I want to return to Apollo style polling. I mean, honestly, right now, really the only U.S. company that doesn't do that polling is SpaceX. ULA still does the poll. A Rocket Lab, we heard, still does the poll. I mean, right? I know NASA definitely still does it. I believe Artemis 1, you still had Charlie Beckwell Thompson running it.
Yeah, so NASA still does it. You will hear it during the countdown and proceedings for Artemis 2. I believe if my brain or my memory is not failing me, Blue Origin also has a poll of sorts with their ground and vehicle teams before launch with New Glenn. So, yeah, Firefly does, Astra does, Blue Origin does, most everyone does except SpaceX. But SpaceX launches so often that perhaps it makes more sense to just automate all of your polls and sequences to limit the amount of people you need to have on hand, especially when you're launching as often as they have been with Starlinks and just Falcon 9 in general. So that is why, as cool as it is to hear, it does make sense on their end. And if anybody else, or I guess when somebody else does eventually match SpaceX's pace, well, hopefully they do, that they will likely follow a similar path, just because it requires a lot less people and manpower involved. So they have the reasons.
Exactly. And it is an actual poll. They still have a comms loop that they talk on when needed, but otherwise, the polling, it's literally just a button on their console. It's basically a go, no go button that they can press. And that way, you also don't have to spend all that time going through the polling and everything. The launch director can literally just look at their screen and go, okay, I see all green dots, or I see all red dots, whatever the case is. Resistor Jet asking, this Falcon 9 is launching V2 mini satellites. When Starship starts launching Starlinks, I assume they will be much bigger and capable of replacing a number of the V2 Starlinks and not deorbit. I mean, we saw the ones that launched on as the demo satellites that launched on the last 2 Starship flights, but the actual ones, do we know the size?
They are actually about the same size and dimension as the actual version 3 simulators that we saw with the previous few Starship flights. And that is why only Starship can launch them, both from a size and weight perspective. So version 3 pretty much outclasses version 2 minis by just about every single dimension, including size, obviously. So they will be about the same size and dimension as version 2 as version 3 sims that we have seen. They're not small satellites by any means. In terms of the maximum capacity of what Starship can carry during a flight, I don't know the answer to that one. I would imagine anywhere from 10 to 20, depending on how much room they have up in the nose cone and the actual PEZ dispenser itself. But yeah, the V3s are gargantuan, especially by comparison. But don't let the name V2 Mini put you off. The V2 Minis are still very big satellites. They were originally, the reason why they're actually called V2 Minis is because originally these Starlink satellites that are going to launch on Starship were originally called version 2, and that's why the ones that launch on Falcon are V2 Minis, and that is why Falcon 9 can fly them. So version 3 Starlinks are going to be a whole other beast, and we cannot wait to see them fly. Hopefully by the end of this year, we might see the first operational one at a starbase. Not entirely sure. It depends on how the first few flights of version 3 go. But they should be coming soon, though.
Soon TM, yes, Elon time.
Yes.
But yeah, and again, as you pointed out, these V2 minis are not mini. They are still very large. They are still very hefty. It's still usually the heaviest payload that we're seeing for Falcon 9, and that's why they typically go for the drone landings to get as much performance out of the vehicle as possible. That's also why we see the full-sized upper stage nozzle for all the Starlinks rather than, as we call it, the stubby, shorter nozzle. So they want to get as much performance and launch as many at one time as they can. And yes, of course, the hope is that we're not seeing as many of these satellites launch. You get the big, launch a whole bunch of them in one go with Starship and get those V3s up.
Yeah, and to put some more perspective on it, back when Starlinks were first launching, they were fitting anywhere from like 58 to 60 of the original V1s in the same size of Falcon 9 payload fairing, and now the most they ever load in there is 29. So it's all, they used to launch double what they can now, and that is just how much bigger the version 2 minis are by comparison. And the version 2 minis pretty much also take up the entire cargo capacity of those payload fairings. So they are not small satellites by any means.
That is for sure. They are not small. And another thing that isn't small is an indicator that they are continuing with propellant load and, in fact, wrapping up that RP1 load on stage 2, which you can see there by the 20-minute, 20-second vent, or as it's better known as the locked chill down. Dave, what do they need to do this for?
Yeah, so this is to prepare for that liquid oxygen loading on the second stage. So this liquid oxygen is really cold, even compared to things you would normally think of as cold. And so you can't just start flowing it through the infrastructure at full speed, preparing to fill up the second stage. It is going to rapidly expand and turn to a gas. And so they start this early to cool down all that infrastructure and prepare for the actual liquid oxygen loading to begin at about the 16-ish minute mark.
And so far, everything looking good with that. And once that venting stops, as pointed out, that's when we will know that the liquid oxygen load has begun on stage 2. Meanwhile, LOX load continues on stage 1, as does the RP1 load on stage 1. And yeah, the temperature difference between RP1 and liquid oxygen, they're, both pretty cold compared to RP1 used by other companies. I know with Atlas, it rolls out with the RP1 still in it because it's basically at ambient temperature. So they chill it down a little bit for Falcon 9, and then, of course, the super chilled liquid oxygen down to, I believe, about minus 340 Fahrenheit. I'm not sure what that is in Celsius. An interesting question kind of going along with this as we see the venting and things like that. Gabriel GG asking, why doesn't SpaceX use flare stacks on their rockets?
Well, they do not utilize any fuels that require flare stacks. So RP1 is happy to sit as it is. Even in its super chilled configuration, they are free to just detank it and then reuse it if they deem necessary. The reason why you would need to have burn stacks, we see that mostly for hydrogen and methane. And the reason why is, in order for those fuels to exist in liquid form, they have to be at a super cold cryogenic state. And of course, because obviously the air around us and just the environment on Earth is not anywhere near that cold, they are in a constant state of boil off, and they have to get rid of anything that does boil off. And of course, that is why it is burned off, and that is why flare stacks are in use. And that is also why we see a flare stack, for example, over at Slick 41, because both Atlas and Vulcan use hydrogen on its Centaur upper stages. Yeah, that is what flare stacks are necessarily for, and that is why we don't see it for Falcon or any other rocket that uses RP1.
And I guess the other question then is, what about the methane load then for Starship?
Oh, you kind of, I don't. I'm not entirely. I'll be completely honest. I'm a little bit stumped there. I think it has something to do with the fact that they already have recondensers on site because it's already super chilled, and they're able to detank it and recondense the methane in to use it again. So I'm not entirely confident in that answer. I think that's right. But yeah, every vehicle is different, and every launch provider has their own methods for utilizing said propellants. A key example being, we do see a methane burn stack over at LC-36, where New Glenn launches from, and obviously not in Starbase, and not eventually here at LC-39A and Slick 37.
Yep. So we'll see as they go, but the whole point is SpaceX is able to reclaim a lot of it, reuse most of that, and again, the rest of the propellants, like we see here for Falcon 9, yeah, they don't really need it. And you can see there also the vent stopping, so that means at this point the lines are chilled down, and they should begin loading the liquid oxygen into stage 2 now, and that will continue all the way down till a couple of minutes before launch. Also, hearing we have some breaking news over at McGregor Live, our 24/7 live feed. And it appears that there was a RUD on one of the test stands there. So the Raptor stands, again, the Raptors, not the ones used on Falcon 9. These are the ones used for Starship. They were doing a test over at McGregor, and it appears that one of them experienced a rapid, unscheduled disassembly over there. This, I believe, is a replay of it from just a short while ago. Uh, yeah, you could see the fire there. Of course, there's the engine fire typically, and then yeah, that looks a little more black than usual.
Yeah, that is certainly one unhappy raptor, but it is worth noting that just because we see a raptor RUD over in McGregor, that does not mean that raptors are just bad engines. They push these engines to their absolute limits, and RUDs are more often than not are intentional to see just how far they can actually push these engines, either in combustion pressure or oxidizer and fuel mixtures, a whole bunch of factors. So a RUD isn't always necessarily a bad thing. It's about finding the limits of what these engines can handle, so that once they are in flight, they operate outside of those parameters to minimize risk to the vehicle and the payload on board, which is very important once you have people on board as well.
Exactly. And also, we're used to it being a lot more clean burning, given the whole methane side of things. So, yeah, that definitely looked a little, Rudd like, but as you pointed out, not always a bad thing. And a huge shout out to our team over at McGregor Live 24/7 for catching that. Of course, you can watch that right here on the YouTube channel. And yeah, Alex pointing out the back channel. Hey, a flare stack. Let's see here. Here's an interesting question that I've been doing some math on while we were getting these answers. Cyron asking, how many V2 mini satellites would shuttle have been able to carry? And doing a little bit of math in the back channel with a little help, I will be honest, from ChatGPT, so take everything with a grain of salt. Each of these satellites, based off of the approximate mass that we know of, they're about 575, 600-ish kilograms. And then add in the typical shuttle payload capacity to LEO, which was about 24 tons. That averages out to about 30 to 40 Starlinks per satellite. That is, of course, if they were able to find a way to condense them all into the shuttle payload bay, depending on the orbit, depending on the orientation, etc., etc. So, in a hypothetical scenario, apparently 30 to 40 Starlink V2 mini satellites would have been able to launch in shuttle, which again, you've got 29 on today's Starlink 6-97 mission aboard Falcon 9, heading to low Earth orbit, this one in that southeastern trajectory here. Here's one from Your Space Nerd asking, how tall is Falcon 9, and will Falcon 9 ever be fully reusable? Who wants to take that one?
So as far as full reusability, definitely not at this point. They had definitely considered trying to reuse the second stage, but Falcon 9 wasn't built from the ground up with second stage reuse in mind. So Starship is able to take advantage of things like its body and its flaps control for reentry to make that more efficient, and of course the actual size of the vehicle. Whereas with Falcon 9, whether you're looking at trying to do some sort of parachute-based recovery, that sort of thing, or propulsive, like it just was not built with it in mind, so it would have way more of a redesign requirement, and way more of an impact on its payload to orbit than is feasible. And Falcon 9 is about 230 feet tall,
which is about 70 meters for those in metric. And it also has a diameter, deep breath, hang on, 3.7 meters, which averages out to about 13 or 14 feet. So it's a pretty skinny rocket, all things considered. But for as skinny as it is, with the current Block 5 configuration, Falcon 9 is also about as tall as it can be for as skinny as it is, just for the sake of how structurally sound it can be with the way that it is currently engineered. So it's a very tall rocket. It is an incredibly tall rocket, especially if you put like Soyuz or even the space shuttle next to it. It's taller than the freaking space shuttle. It is not a small rocket, even though if you put Starship next to it, it's kind of small. But Falcon 9 is no slouch by any means.
Yeah, definitely shorter than shuttle, or taller than shuttle. It was very weird going from the end of STS-135 and then going over to Pad 40 and seeing early Falcon going, oh, okay, this is our new rocket, I guess. Let me thank some people here. Yusen, thank you for becoming a Padrat member. And Espacio para Todos, thank you for becoming a Capcom member. Space for all there. Capcom and above gets access to the NSF Discord as well, where we've got all different kinds of channels related to all the different space programs, different vehicles, and then, of course, general chat like sports ball, food, all these different things, and a great community in there. So thank you very much for doing that. We will see you in the Discord as soon as today, which, geez, what is today? We're already almost halfway through January? Sorry, I had to look at my calendar to see that. If only I had a more convenient one on my wall. Oh, wait, I can get one at shop.nasaspaceflight.com. The 2026 spaceflight calendar is now shipping. It is no longer pre orders. So if you want it, it will ship at shop.nasaspaceflight.com. There's, of course, the general one with all different kinds of spaceflight, Falcon 9 in there, plenty. You see Atlas, some Starship shots in there, but if you prefer Starship the whole time, we do have an entire Starship calendar as well. And don't forget, we have ones depending on your preference that either start the week on a Sunday or start the week on a Monday. So check that out, shop.nasaspaceflight.com. Another thing to check out is that we have another camera out in the field today as well. It is our good friend Wade, Dr. WD40, who streams over on Twitch, is kind enough to share their view with us today. Right now, taking a look at some of the birds out there on the water. Wade is a great streamer doing a whole bunch of different things out there, including bird watching, metal detecting, and of course, coming out for some of these launches. So a huge shout out to Wade for allowing us to use their feed and checking that out, and for rolling out. So thank you, Dr. WD40. So we are now under 9 minutes to go for today's launch of the Starlink 6-97 mission, bringing 29 Starlink V2 mini satellites to low Earth orbit. And this one, Max, a pretty seasoned booster today.
It is. So booster B1078 is what is currently stationed over at Slick 40 today, and today's mission marks its 25th scheduled to date. So not the most veteran of boosters currently in service, although it is not far off, with a lot of boosters now currently at or above the 20 flight milestone, one of which above being 30 being the legendary 1067, which is currently the oldest in the fleet, at least here in Florida. There is one, I think, oh gosh, I think it's 1065, which is currently over in Vandenberg at like 30 or 31 flights right now. So, or maybe it's 29. I'm not sure. No, I think it's 30. I'm thinking in real time here, folks. Sorry, but yes. So B1078 seeing 25 flights on its record to this point, including this mission, seems like a lot when you look at it on paper, especially looking at its previous flight history. But good lord, yeah, it is. It is no slouch to say the least. But seeing 25 flights on a first stage booster now to this point, considering we've seen others at or above 30 now, is just business as usual for what SpaceX wants to do with Falcon 9, with the current trajectory that they want to use, having the booster certified up to 40 flights at the moment, and we are almost there, kind of, with a handful of boosters now. So, yes, hoping to see more get above 30 and to that 40 flight milestone. Which honestly, even if you said that 2 or 3 years ago, you'd sound insane, because we all thought after 10 flights these boosters were about to pop, and here we are now. One being at 31 flights is absolutely incredible.
Right, and again, this one on its 25th flight. Right now, the engines are in chill down, so preparing them for the thermal load that they are about to experience, starting to run some of that cool propellant through it, and that way it's thermally conditioned once they light those engines, and it's less of a risk of cracking or damaging any of those engine bells. And D, can we get one final check-in with the weather with you? I know we can still see a bit of that wind.
So D is actually working on some cameras right now, but I can answer that one for you, Sawyer.
Go ahead, Max.
Just to recap, things are looking overall pretty good for today. The sun is shining. We have not clear skies, but a lot of the clouds that we do see are higher up in the atmosphere and are not terribly obstructive at the moment. The one key factor that we are currently looking out for, at least here at the launch site, are winds. It is very, very breezy today, and there are a couple of wind advisories in effect both here at the Kennedy Space Center and the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. But at the moment, there is nothing that is show-stopping. Obviously, as SpaceX is pressing on towards the current T0 of 4:08 p.m. local time here on the east coast of Florida. But everything is looking good. The sun is shining, which is unique for a Starlink mission nowadays, which is a very, very pleasant change of pace. But everything so far is, as we like to say, trending in the right direction.
Exactly. And again, you can see from all the different views there, the clouds relatively thin today, which is what we like to see. And the winds all seem to be within limits. Max, I'm going to let you head out with D as well to man your cameras, and we will check back in with you both after.
Thank you very much, everybody, and we will see y'all on the other side.
All right. Now, under 5 minutes to go until the launch today of Starlink 6-97. Again, as mentioned, this booster set to go on its 25th flight. Downrange, waiting for the booster, is the drone ship Just Read the Instructions. You can hear there they are now going to begin the strongback retract. So, behind that crew access tower, there is a metallic structure that is up against Falcon 9 that is known as the strongback or transporter erector. So that is usually inside the horizontal integration facility. It rolls out with the fully integrated Falcon 9 and raises it vertical at the pad. In addition to that, it also has data lines, thermal conditioning lines, propellant lines, all of those running from that to the rocket. So that kind of connects the ground systems to Falcon 9. At the mark that you see now, what it will start to do is unclamp from underneath those two fairing halves at the top, the clamshell features protecting the satellites, and then it will lean back 1.8 degrees. You can see there's the opening right on the bottom of your screen there. And then it will do that lean back. So it doesn't seem like a lot, but it's enough to just get out of the way for liftoff, kind of get those lines, get some tension on them, pull them farther away, and then at liftoff, it will throw all the way back. The lines will retract inside of it, and Falcon 9 will fly away. Doing so with just that shorter distance means there's less chance of the larger lines getting fried or damaged as it flies by, and then as a result, it means less turnaround time between launches. Coming up now, we'll also be continuing to see wrap-up of propellant load on Falcon 9. Again, Falcon 9 uses liquid oxygen as the oxidizer, as well as RP1, rocket propellant 1, which is a refined form of kerosene, inside Falcon 9 as the propellants. It also uses a substance called TTEB, triethyl aluminum triethylborane, that is used to ignite all of the engines, both the 9 on the first stage and the Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage as well.
Stage 1 LOX load is complete.
And speaking of, there we go. Liquid oxygen load is now complete on stage 1. We should be waiting now just for them to finish loading up propellants on stage 2 as well. And then once that's done, we will see final gas closeout where they will purge all of the lines one last time, both on the transporter erector as well as at the pad, for any remaining gases that may still be inside. Purge them all out, and again, less risk of those gases kind of lingering around at liftoff. Coming up now on about 2 minutes to go until launch. So far, everything looking good at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida, out at Space Launch Complex 40. As mentioned, the 25th flight for this booster. This will also mark, for this particular launch pad here, the 301st launch from Space Launch Complex 40 for SpaceX.
Stage 2
this
LOX
also
load
marking
is complete.
the 344th dedicated Starlink launch for SpaceX and the 97th for Group 6, actually sticking to its number. And there you can see with the propellant load complete, that final purge on the transporter erector. And then we should also be getting that call out shortly for the gas line closeout at the pad. You can see there's the remaining liquid oxygen that was in the line purging out.
Ground gas closeouts.
And there we go. There's that call out. So coming up next will be the call out, hopefully, for Falcon 9 entering startup. That is when the onboard computers will take control of the countdown. That is also when the tanks will begin pressurizing to their final flight levels ahead of launch. Again, our clock is real time. There's a slight delay from the SpaceX comms, so we will hear that a couple of seconds after our clock hits the T-minus 1 minute mark.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
There we go. The onboard computers now have control of the countdown. Coming up next, we will hopefully hear the go for launch from the launch director. Let's listen in for that.
LD, go for launch.
And there it is. Falcon 9 is go for launch. Now under 30 seconds to go. It does take a little bit for the sound to get to our microphones because we're about 3-ish miles away, so it'll take a little bit, but once it does reach us, of course, we'll let you listen to that beautiful, crisp audio. 15 seconds to go. Next up will be the Rainbirds, which is a little hard to see behind the shrubs. That is a water deluge system that activates at the base of Falcon 9. And then we should see a flash of TTEB igniting those engines, which will mean ignition. And liftoff of Falcon 9 and Starlink 6-97. Go V2 minis, go. Falcon 9 passing through max Q, maximum aerodynamic pressure, currently pushing against the vehicle. And again, that even though the speed will continue to climb, that is the densest part that it will be fighting against. You can see a little bit of a vapor cone there as it was on its way up. Again, you see the side-on view, courtesy of our friend Dr. WD-40, downrange, 90 seconds into flight. And as you can also see those 9 Merlin 1D engines burning and the plume starting to expand as it gets into the thinner and thinner parts of the atmosphere. And as it does so, we'll also keep an eye out on that flame color as it will start to change colors a little bit from that bright orange to more bluish greenish for a bit. That will be followed by 3 events in rapid succession about 20 seconds from now, starting with MECO, or main engine cutoff, when those 9 Merlin 1D engines will shut down. That will be followed by the separation of the first and second stages, and then that will be followed after that by the ignition of the Merlin vacuum upper stage engine known as SES-1 second engine start 1. Then approximately 15 to 20 seconds after that, we will hopefully see those payload fairing halves separate away and be recovered. So there's MECO, main engine cutoff. Next up will be stage separation. And then we will keep an eye out for ignition of that Merlin vacuum engine. And there it is. So stage 1 now on its way back down to be recovered on the drone ship. Meanwhile, stage 2 continuing to push those 29 Starlink V2 mini satellites into orbit. Next up will be the jettison of those payload fairing halves. There is both an active and a passive side. So one will do the pushing, the other will be pushed away as a result. And there they are. You can see very carefully those 2 little dots on the side. Those are the fairing halves. Those are all flight proven, as you can tell by how sooty they were. And those will indeed be recovered downrange, scooped up out of the water, and then brought back to hopefully be flown again. And a reminder, downrange today is just read the instructions to catch the or for the booster to land on, and then hopefully that will be scooped up for those by Bob to be brought back.
Sawyer.
Hi, Max.
Hello.
How was that one?
Oh, way louder than I thought it was going to be, given the actual wind direction for today, because wind plays a big factor in how the sound arrives to you and interacts with your surroundings. But very loud, very punchy, as I often like to say. But beautiful seeing Falcon 9 climb against a bright blue sky and some very atmospheric clouds. So there certainly have been worse days to go to space.
I mean, there really aren't bad days to go to space if it launches and is successful.
Yeah, but some days are better than others.
Fair enough. And now at this point, Falcon 9's first stage reaching apogee, the highest point in its trajectory. You can see there the altitude stops, the speed stops, and now that it's going faster again, that means it's on its way downhill back, as mentioned, to hopefully land on the drone ship in just about 4.5 minutes from now. And as it gets into that thicker parts of the atmosphere, of course, there is still 2 burns that need to be completed. First is the entry burn, which starts off as a single engine before booting up 3 total engines to help slow itself down by fighting fire with fire. We'll talk about more about that in just a minute. And then following that will be the single engine landing burn a couple of minutes later, where hopefully we will see those legs deploy and it touch down on the drone ship. You can also see those little puffs of gas. Those are cold gas jet thrusters that I believe uses nitrogen as small pulses that are used to then kind of help maneuver the vehicle and keep it on its current path and trajectory. And the view up there from the interstage, it's kind of interesting. We really never get to see up in the interstage other than just for the separation part. You've got that giant mechanism in the middle there that people kind of forget about.
Yeah, and that's what's used to actually push against the actual thrust chamber of the MVAC engine on stage 2 to help separate the vehicles. It literally is a mechanism. It literally pushes up onto it, which seems kind of aggressive. But when it comes to having a booster that is reusable, you don't want to be using any explosive bolts or one-time use parts.
That is true. And yeah, so the SpaceX really likes their pusher systems. And everything looking good to this point. Again, the beautiful blue skies, FTS safe there, flight termination system, and here comes the entry burn. So starting up with 1 engine, and then up to 3, as you could tell by kind of that rectangular shape. So at this point, going through the thicker parts of the atmosphere, it is now sort of using that flame around it as a protection around it. It's sort of creating a heat shield of fire. So that's why we say fighting fire with fire. Flying through its own plume, though, you will see some of that soot end up on the booster. And there we go, down to 1, and that is shut down on it. And then, of course, the thrusters, getting it lined up to where it needs to go for that landing. And the flight termination system now safe as well on stage 2. So now 25 kilometers in altitude. In just a little bit, next up will be that final landing burn, as we mentioned. That is a single engine on stage 1 that burns. That will then use those grid fins, that kind of waffle grid-like structure that you see on your screen, to help steer it in those thicker parts of the atmosphere. And then just before touchdown, we will hopefully see those landing legs deploy and landing on top of Just Read the Instructions. Should get a cool view punching through the clouds right here. Now 10 kilometers in altitude, lower than the speed of sound. At about 1,200 kilometers an hour still. Everything looks good. Should be coming up any moment now on that landing burn. Now 1,000 kilometers an hour, under 5 kilometers in altitude above the deck of the drone ship.
Stage 1 landing burn.
Oh, look at this.
Stage 2 terminal guidance.
And there's ignition punching right through the clouds. And there is the drone ship. Just read the instructions underneath that left grid fin. Aiming right towards it now. Grid fins doing their work. Landing legs deploy. And
Stage 1 landing confirmed.
Touchdown. Another beautiful landing for Falcon 9 safely on the deck of the drone ship. And now we should be any second seeing Seco 1, second engine cutoff 1. And there it is. Shutting down that Merlin vacuum. Now there are 3 words that we really want to hear. Let's listen for them.
Nominal orbit insertion.
There we go.
That means we
put What is that? What is that transition?
It's the moon.
What is that transition? I've never seen that. Stop it. Jay, stop.
I was trying to look past it, but yeah, that's a new one. But yeah, there it is, safely on the deck of the drone ship. 26 now added to the end of that booster. 25 successful launches and landings. Absolutely beautiful.
That was like a lunar transition jump scare right there. Like, I've never seen that before.
Talk about a lunar transit.
Oh my God, stop.
Nice. That was good.
Stop. I'm leaving now. Bye.
No, don't leave. We have replays. Stick around. There's some really cool replays coming up. I promise.
Good Lord.
And while we get those replays pulled, let me thank some people here really quickly. Tommy, getting the calendar, saying going to be great watching this slowly tick by, hopefully seeing plenty of launches. Well, there you go. We already have another launch added to that list for Falcon 9. Apocalypse Cow gifting 5 Red Team memberships. Thank you very much for that danger move. Appreciate that. And then Unplugged Lamp with a $5 super chat asking, why does the Mylar inflate? So that kind of aluminum foil looking type metallic structure. Why does that inflate?
My best guess there is obviously when the Mylar was installed, there was, I guess, just some ambient air from inside of it whenever it was installed, either in Hawthorne during assembly or, whenever it is arriving to either here or Vandenberg. And of course, when you are in the vacuum of space, when stage 1 and stage 2 separate, you are now in the vacuum of space, and because you're in a vacuum, any ambient pressure wants to expand and come outwards, and that could be why we see it expand. I'm not entirely sure though. I do have to be honest. That's just my best guess.
Yeah, we need an Alex answer at some point, but then again, we'd be here until the next Starlink launch in 2 days.
Yeah, in literally 2 days, yeah.
Yeah, and that's worth noting. Again, replays are coming, but it's interesting to note that they are going for really quick turnaround this year, because now that they are primarily focusing on Slick 40, it seems like, the next launch is currently scheduled for this coming Wednesday. At 1:01 p.m. Eastern Time is when that window opens. It is another traditional 4-hour-long window going until 5:01 p.m. Eastern Time, Wednesday, January 14th. And as we saw earlier in the broadcast, the drone ship with shortfall of Gravitas already on its way out, in fact, to get ready for that drone ship landing for booster 1085, hopefully to be the one on top of that. Meanwhile, this one, of course, will return back to Port Canaveral, which you'll be able to see on our Space Coast Live 24/7 cameras right here at NSF for when it does come back in, when they remove it off the deck of the drone ship, fold up the legs, lower it horizontal, roll it back over to Hangar X at Roberts Road at the Kennedy Space Center to get it ready for its next flight. Because that booster had about a 2-month turnaround time, so it feels slow. Only 59 days between flights, long time, huh?
I know. I think it's weird to see a booster with over, say, like a 35 to 40 day time period in between flights now, because they are very capable of turning these boosters around. Although in Florida they have a lot more choice of boosters than compared to Vandenberg, which their fleet there is a lot smaller, but it makes sense because their launch cadence is not as high as here in Florida. They also only have one launch pad over there right now, so yeah, they can certainly turn these boosters around. But that being said, I believe Vandenberg has the record in between booster turnarounds being, I think it's, correct me if I'm wrong, is it 9 days or something? I think it's 9 days.
9 days?
I think? Somebody fact check me on that. I
9
think.
days. It's somewhere around there, I believe. So, but yeah, they've gotten pretty quick with the turnaround times here. It's strange seeing, just a 2-month turnaround time feeling like a long time, both with this booster and as well for the next one set to launch Wednesday. Also, approximately 2 months between flights. And it's amazing, though, how quickly they'll raise that transporter erector. And then, Max, they still have to roll it back, load on a Falcon 9 onto it, and then put it back out. And yet they do it in a matter of days.
I mean, the team over at Slick 40, and I really just with Falcon in general, and that's not to say Starship isn't, but the Falcon teams at SpaceX really are a well-oiled machine when it comes to pad operations and also recovery. They absolutely know what they're doing, and they have everything down to a science right now. And should anything come up, they know how to work the problems. So, yes, Falcon is a very unique beast, but SpaceX sure knows how to handle them and launch them as soon as they can. And just going back to that previous point we were talking about, Alex, now in the back channel saying yes, B1088 currently holds the current turnaround record of 9 days, 3 hours, 39 minutes, and 28 seconds between SphereX and Punch missions. The SphereX and Punch mission, and then the NROL 57 mission. for the U.S. Space Force and DoD. So that is a very prestigious record. I do have to say, I don't believe any booster here in Florida can really come close to that. But we have a lot more boosters and 2 launch pads here. So East Coast, West Coast.
Agreed. Yeah, we don't need to turn them around that fast because we've got so many of them. We've got a great refurbishment facility over at Hangar. Is it Hangar X or X2 now that they do the refurbishment? It's still X, right?
Yeah, Falcon 9 is currently refurbed over in Hangar X, and as far as we are aware from what we can see, Hangar X2 is for payload and Starlink integration, and that is also where they make all of the SpaceX thermal protection system tiles as well, before they are shipped out to, right now, just Starbase, but eventually here as well, once Star Factory and Gigabay here in Florida are up and running. But that is from my understanding that is what Hangar X2 is for. And finally, replays. Let's go.
There we go. This one of the wide views from the lawn over at the press site. And again, we talk about the shrubbery, feeling all Monty Python, Knights Who Say Knee, but through the shrubs there, you could see Slick 40. Beautiful views. Again, the clouds. The clouds are not paid actors, although it seems like it sometimes. That's why, as amazing as it is to have a launch with beautifully clear skies, there's something nice about having that little bit of contrast. I don't know if you feel the same way, Max.
Yeah, I mean, blue sky, like clear blue skies are lovely, but when you have just the right amount of clouds around, it makes for a much more picturesque atmosphere, and so it makes the tracking footage a lot more atmospheric and pretty to look at. Same with the photos as well. So yeah, while obviously you can't have way too many clouds, you can also have just the right amount for our visual pleasure. So it worked out today.
Yeah, and the right thickness of cloud too, where you get the shots of it punching through the cloud, but you can still see it through the cloud. There's that sweet spot. And this one rising from behind one of the boats at Port
Oh, look at
Canaveral.
that.
22 flashbacks.
Oh, that is so cool. Again, those are both our fleet cameras over at Rusty's at the port. Great place to watch a launch. Great place to grab a bite to eat. We were just talking the other day about the food there of, I think, the mac and cheese bites we were talking about.
Yeah, yes, actually, yes, they are phenomenal. I'm not gonna lie.
Not sponsored to say the mac and cheese bites are good. They're just good.
This being from one of our robot cameras over at the hut here at the press site.
Beat me to it. Almost like we've done this a few times.
Have we? I thought this was our first time.
You know, I don't know. Yeah, definitely. We've never done this before. Falcon 9 has never launched before. Never seen a Starlink before. And then one from behind the trees. And then I believe your track, Max, one of them. It was either you or D. I believe we saw the vapor cone as it was going through today, too.
That must have been D's because I kept my feet out pretty wide considering the amount of camera shake we were getting and also just to add a different perspective. But I could see just a bit of a vapor cone there as well. And obviously a little vapor ring there as well as it went through the cloud layer up top. So yes, a very, very pretty one today.
I'm being told that we will see it in the slow motion replay that we have at the very end that we typically see. So we will get to see the vapor cone in slow motion, which for people who don't know, what do we mean by the vapor cone?
So the vapor cone is produced when Falcon 9 is transitioning from subsonic into supersonic speeds, and shockwaves form around the vehicle. And of course, behind the shockwave are low pressure areas. And when you are passing through areas of high humidity and condensation, that is obviously where you get the actual vapor forming around the shockwaves of the vehicle. Sometimes you get a lot, like a very, very dramatic vapor cone, and sometimes you don't get any. It depends on what the atmospheric conditions are like that day, and especially here in Florida in the summertime when there's a lot of moisture in the air, vapor cones are all the more prevalent.
There you go. You can see the ring from it, like a smoke ring. I know that whenever it gets right around max Q, I start clicking extra fast just in case to grab that. And Amy Harrell coming in with a $10 super chat saying, a beautiful ride, Falcon 9 Starlink. It was a beautiful ride. Thank you again for the support. And I want to thank the team that joined me here today. Max Evans, thank you for joining from the field.
God, that transition just scares me every time. It's like a moon jump scare. But thank you very much, everyone, for having me on. It's a pleasure, as always, to be chatting with y'all and hanging out with y'all on this lovely afternoon here watching rockets. So thank you very much, as always, and we will see you again in just a couple of days.
Exactly. We will have DY's slow motion on the way out, but I'll make sure I thank DY's now, as well as Jay Keegan, who has been the one producing, pushing the buttons, pulling the levers, bringing all the views that Max and D set up for everyone. I am Sawyer Rosenstein. I've been your host for today's Starlink launch. How about we do this again about 2 days from now? Sound good? Hopefully we'll see you then for it. Until then, keep up to date with everything on all of our social channels and see when the latest launches are coming up on nextspaceflight.com using the Next Spaceflight app. We'll see y'all next time.
And here we go.
There's the W. Here's ignition.
Doubling up.
Did you just do a Kerbal?
Back to the moon and beyond.
Put that in the big bag, you know.
Back at home, we all have a lot of work to do, but from here, that sure looks like a perfect flow.
Propulsion continues to be normal.
We did have an observation.
343 unfolds to go.
It's orange.
Water towers fly!
Bingo! Right in the center.
Where's Jacqueline? There it is!
That was surreal.
That's not what we want to see.
No!
Oh my God.
Yikes. You bet. We don't need any more of these.